My name is Harold Finch. I am 66 years old, and the Sunday my daughter finally came back to dinner, I had already changed the will. The pot roast had been in the oven since 2 o'clock. The third porch step creaked the way it always had, a specific, low sound that Eleanor used to say meant the house was breathing. I had set the table for 2. I had set it that way for a long time, even when I was the only one eating, because the extra place felt like a kind of faith I was not ready to abandon. Sondra did not know about the folder. She had never asked about it. Welcome back to Dad's True Revenge, where the steadiest hand wins every time. If you've ever given everything and got nothing back, this story is for you. Drop a comment and be sure to subscribe. You're going to love it here. My name is Harold Finch, and I practiced family law for 31 years from an office on Glascock Street in Raleigh's Mordecai neighborhood, a 2-room operation on the second floor of a building that used to be a hardware store, with a window that faced the street and let in the afternoon light in a way I never bothered to change. I handled wills, estates, property disputes, the occasional custody arrangement. I knew what documents meant. I knew what the absence of a document meant. I had spent 31 years watching families come apart over what had and had not been written down. My wife Eleanor died on March 15th, 2016. Pancreatic cancer, diagnosed in November, gone by March. For months, I drove her to Rex Cancer Center on Blue Ridge Road every Tuesday and every Friday for 16 weeks. I sat in the chair next to her bed during the infusions and read to her from whatever she was reading, because she said her eyes went unfocused after the first hour, and she liked to hear the words. She was 58 years old. We had been married 33 years. Sondra was 30 at the time. She came to the hospital twice during the 16 weeks. She came to the funeral. She flew back to Raleigh from Charlotte, where she and her husband Greg lived, the morning of the service, and left that same afternoon. I stood on the porch at 6:47 that evening and watched her rental car turn off Glascock Street. The pot roast I had put in before we left for the church was still warm on the counter. I had been cooking Sunday dinner since 1985, pot roast in the colder months, grilled chicken in summer, fish on the Fridays before Easter, because Eleanor had kept that habit and I had kept it after her. I cooked it every week. The table was set for however many were coming, and one extra. First for Eleanor's mother, then for Eleanor herself after she was gone, and then, for a long time, for Sondra. I had paid Sondra's law school tuition in full. $94,000 over 3 years at Campbell University, every semester on time, never discussed as a debt. She graduated in 2012, passed the bar on the first attempt, and took a position at a corporate firm in Charlotte where Greg worked. I sent her a card when she passed. She called to thank me. That was the last phone call we had that lasted more than 4 minutes. The first Sunday after Eleanor's funeral that Sondra did not come, I noted the time, 4:02 p.m., in the margin of the legal pad I kept on my desk. I did not think of it as a record. I thought of it as the kind of attention a man pays when something he cannot explain begins to form. There was a folder in the bottom drawer of my desk, the one with the brass handle that Eleanor had given me when I opened the practice in 1991. Thin, manila, labeled with a strip of white tape. I had started it as a professional habit, and evidence of pattern that my legal training told me might one day matter, though I could not have said then exactly how. My chest, when still the afternoon, I put the first entry in. Over the years that followed, I paid the property taxes on the Glascock Street house without asking Sondra to contribute for $1,847 annually, even after she had suggested, in her careful way, that I might consider downsizing. I kept Eleanor's garden on the south side of the house every spring, because Sondra had said once, when she was 23, that she missed it when she was away at school. I drove to Sondra and Greg's house and carry on 3 separate occasions when she did not answer my calls. I left food on the porch each time and did not mention it. I sent a birthday card and a check for $500 every year for 38 years. The last 9 years, the checks were cashed. No call came. On the Sunday before Easter in 2018, I had a conversation with Sondra that I want to describe carefully, because it mattered in a way I did not fully understand until later. She and Greg had come for dinner, one of the infrequent visits they still made in those years, and at the table, After the meal, Greg said that Sunday dinners were a lot to ask of people with careers and a social life. He said it the way people say things they expect to be agreed with. Sondra looked at the tablecloth. I didn't answer. My face went still. A month later, Sondra called on a Saturday morning. She said they would not be coming for Easter. She said it had been a busy season. She said, "Dad, we have our own life. You can't expect us to keep showing up for these dinners like it's still 1987. That's not how families work anymore." I nodded once, though she could not see it. My breath went shallow for a moment. I held the phone in both hands and looked at the window above the kitchen sink. I said I understood, and I told her I'd talk to her soon. She said goodbye. The line went quiet at 9:38 a.m. on a Saturday in April. In the years that followed, the folder grew. I kept the entries in the same format: date, occasion, what had been prepared, what time the table was set, what time I confirmed she was not coming, method of cancellation if any, birthday dinners, Thanksgiving, Christmas Eve, the Sunday I had her college graduation portrait reframed and hung in the front room, and called to tell her, and she did not call back. I maintained the entries not from bitterness. The folder was factual, the way a legal record is factual, but because I spent 31 years in a profession that understood the weight of documented absence. Something in me had folded in on itself quietly the afternoon I began it, and I had made a separate peace with what it represented. In the spring of 2021, at a Sunday dinner Sondra had agreed to attend, and then canceled by text at 3:47 p.m., I noted entry number 61. My shoulders went tight when I read the text. I set my phone down on the kitchen counter and put the pot roast away. Eleanor had a sister, Ruth, who lived in Durham. Ruth came to dinner occasionally, not every Sunday, but when she could. And she was the one who noticed a folder on my desk one evening in 2022 when she had stayed late after dinner to help me sort Eleanor's remaining correspondence. She did not ask about it. She looked at the label and looked at me. I said it was a legal matter I was tending to. She nodded and said nothing else. In the summer of 2022, Sondra and Greg came to the house for what I understood was an assessment visit. They walked through the rooms with a kind of purposeful attention I recognized from property dispute cases. The way a person looks at a space, they have already begun to calculate. Greg said the Glascock Street house would do well on the current market. Sondra said the neighborhood had appreciated considerably. She said, in the reasonable tone she used for things she had already decided, "Dad, when the time comes, this house should go to someone who can use it properly." My eyes stung when she said it, driving home, and then I remembered I was already home. I was standing in the front room. I said I'd keep it in mind. She did not look at the portrait on the wall. 2 weeks later, I called Carol Reese. Carol Reese was an estate attorney with practice on Hillsborough Street, methodical, unsentimental, the kind of attorney who read documents entirely before she spoke about them. I had referred clients to her for years. I drove to her office on a Thursday morning and put the folder and my existing will on her desk at 9:14 a.m. She read the will first. Then she opened the folder. She read through it without expression. She reached the final entry, number 87 at that point, and closed the folder and set it down. She said, "Harold, do you want to amend this will?" I said I did. She said, "To what degree?" I told her. She drafted the amendment that afternoon. The revised document named Eleanor's sister Ruth as primary heir of the Glascock Street property and the majority of the liquid estate. A separate trust was established for a scholarship fund at Campbell University. Eleanor's idea, originally never formalized. Sondra was not removed entirely. A specific bequest of $14,000 remained, representing the years she had attended dinner. I signed the amended will at 2:44 p.m. on January 9th. Dwight Amara, a notary at the Wake County Clerk's office on McDowell Street, witnessed and certified the amendment at 3:07 p.m. the same afternoon. I drove home on Glascock Street with the radio off. I continued cooking Sunday dinner. In the third Sunday in November, I made the final entry. Sondra had canceled by voicemail at 11:09 a.m. The occasion was her childhood birthday, the one Eleanor had always made a formal dinner for, regardless of the date it fell. Entry number 94. I wrote the date, the occasion, the time. I closed the folder and put it back in the bottom drawer. My stomach had turned over when I listened to the voicemail. I replayed it once to confirm I had heard it correctly. Then I set the phone face down on the desk. Sondra began calling more frequently that winter. She called on a Tuesday in January to ask about the house's assessed value, casually, as if checking in. She called in February to ask when I was thinking of updating the will. She said she wanted to make sure everything was organized, which was a word I recognized from estate cases where one party had already begun to plan. Greg sent a text on a Wednesday asking if I considered a living trust. My hands went still on the desk when I read it. In early March, Martin Sloane, a probate attorney on Fayetteville Street who handled readings for several Raleigh practices, including Carol Reese's, sent a formal notification of the will reading to all parties. The notification arrived by certified mail on a Tuesday morning at 8:37 a.m. Sondra called me that same afternoon. She said she had received a letter about the estate. I kept my voice level. She said she wanted to talk through what to expect at the reading. I said Martin Sloane would explain everything at the appropriate time. Something behind my sternum held steady. I did not add anything further. The will reading was at 10:30 a.m. on the second Thursday of February at Martin Sloane's office on Fayetteville Street. Sondra and Greg arrived together. Greg was in a blazer. Sondra had her hair pulled back. They sat across the table from me and Ruth, who had come from Durham the night before and stayed in Eleanor's old room, which still smelled faintly of a cedar sachets Eleanor had kept in the closet. Martin Sloane opened the session by placing two documents on the table. The first was the amended will. The second was a folder. He opened the amended will and read the primary bequest first, the Glascock Street property and the liquid estate to Ruth. He read the trust provision for the Campbell University scholarship. He read the specific bequest of $14,000 to Sondra. He paused. Sondra's attorney, a man she had retained for the reading, which told me she had expected something different, asked what the basis was for the amendment. Martin Sloane opened the folder. He did not read every entry. He read the first, which was dated the Sunday after Eleanor's funeral. He read the last, which was entry number 94. He read the total, 94 misoccasions over 8 years, and set the folder on the table between us. My chest tightened. My hands held the folder's edge steady. Sondra's face went still. Her attorney put his hand on her arm and said he would like a recess. Martin Sloane said they were welcome to take one. Sondra looked at me. Her throat moved once. She looked at the folder. I said nothing. The recess lasted 11 minutes. When they returned, Sondra's attorney said his client accepted the terms. There was no legal challenge. The amendment was valid, properly witnessed, properly filed. The folder was documentary evidence of the circumstances that had informed Harold's decision, and it was his legal right to make. Sondra did not speak directly to me before she left. She walked past the table and paused at the door for a moment. She did not turn around. Greg held the door. Ruth took my arm when we walked out at 3:18 p.m. The light on Fayetteville Street was a low February kind that makes everything look precise and unhurried. I drove home on Glascock Street and turned the heat on and stood in the kitchen for a while. Then I made dinner. Harold Finch, 66 years old, and the table on Glascock Street still has 2 chairs. Presence is a choice. So is the record you keep of its absence. The smell of pot roast on a Sunday afternoon. The creak of the third porch step. The sound of a chair that no one pulled out for 8 years. When Martin Sloane opened that folder and began reading the dates aloud, what do you think went through Sondra's mind in that moment? Drop your answer in the comments. If this story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe for more real, raw, and family-centered stories. And as always, thank you for being a part of this sphere.